Hello, can everybody hear me? All right, that's great. Um, okay, so this is definitely a work in progress right now. It's actually a bold experiment with the class this semester. I'm shooting from the hip, um, both in the classroom and here. So we'll see how it unfolds. Um, so my research is on sacred space, and I started thinking about the problem of teaching about space a long time ago, and it emerged for me actually when I was in doing my undergrad. I was doing field work in Turkey in this cave basilica. It's like a 6th century Byzantine uh, cave site, and it was unpublished, so I was mapping it and photographing it. And as I was there, I found myself frustrated with the thought of how meager the data that I was going to bring back was going to be in comparison to actually being in the space. Right? So I started thinking at that time, there's got to be a way to take this back and share it, to be able to put people in the space. Of course, we didn't have the technology back. This is like in the early 90s. But I was already using a computer program to help me map it, and I could see that, we were moving in that direction. Okay, so now we actually have, not only do we have, has the technology advanced to allow us to do sort of immersive experiences, but it's become incredibly user-friendly and affordable and accessible. Over the last 2 decades, as the technology has been developing, I've been conversing with people, mainly with computer scientists, about the technology. And as it was developing, it was really cumbersome, and it demanded a lot of technical knowledge. It demanded huge storage space, huge RAM capacity. So it was never practical until now. So I had been thinking over the last 2 years, ever since an IT guy at William & Mary came into my office and said, "I think I found something for you." And he had this piece of cardboard. And so ever since he introduced me to it, I've been trying to figure out, how am I I want to create a class around this. But I never had the time to do it. So I finally decided this semester that I was going to have the students help me do it. So I created this class, and I had them all buy, instead of a textbook, they all bought a $15 Google Cardboard. And I have set them loose this semester to find VR content that we can use in the class. There's some that I already was familiar with that I'll share, but others that they are discovering for me, which is really helpful. And I'm collecting that so that I can share it with others who want to teach with it. So this little thing just folds out, and you slide your smartphone in, and then you're ready to go. You have your own headset for immersive experience. So the students all have, they use their own smartphone device. The most useful applications at this point that the students and I have found are Google Street View and the YouTube 360 video. There's already an enormous amount of content available on Google Street View. It's all public. When people publish to it, it's an open platform, and it's all publicly accessible. So for those of you who want to demo later, I would suggest, right now, or over the next 20 minutes, make sure you download the Google Street View app. If you go onto the computer to Google Street View, it's very limited. It doesn't have the same kind of accessibility that the app on the phone has. You can find sites on the phone and email them to yourself, and you can see them on the computer, but you can't access them the same way on the computer as you can through the phone. Okay, so I just have a few statements in here that I've paced out through this to share with you. And this is from my sort of the argument I made in my course proposal, that the VR headsets, they immerse the students in the space, allowing them to look around and experience the spatial dynamics as if they are actually there. Students can find and observe in context the very content that they have been reading about. Certain relief sculptures or architectural elements, specific rituals, or the way devotees interact with the space. They can experience all this in relation to the space as a whole, rather than through the limiting and constricting frame of a standard camera. And so we can have, here's an example, right? This is a Lakshmi from the Kalasanata temple at Ellora in Maharashtra. For those of us, when we're teaching with images, this is pretty much what we've been limited to. For the students, this is something that they would likely come across in an article, right? So you're reading a chapter or an article, and they'll have a still image of whatever it is. And you're boxed in by the frame, and you have no idea of the context. Right? So you don't know where in the compound this is. You don't know what it's situated over and against. And even if in the chapter you're reading, it tells you that it's actually in the entrance, you still don't, it doesn't give you any, it doesn't give you any kind of an experience of what that means for it to be at the entrance of the site. And this may, Jim, when you were talking about the Huntingtons, with the Huntington collection and the way that they approached taking photos, and how he's a very good photographer, right? So composition is important. The thinking about the context of what they're shooting, right? But that's being controlled by the photographer, right? Here, what we have now is something that's completely different. So here we are now, it's this same image, we're now in the temple space, at the entrance to the temple. And we can now pivot our viewpoint. And what you're experiencing here now, this is me dragging it around on the monitor, right? So you're still constricted by the frame of the monitor, right? But with the headset, it's the student standing there looking around like this, And the difference, I'd be interested to see or speak with you about your difference in experience between what I'm showing you right now and after, when you come up and look through the headset and experience it that way. Not only can you pivot around, and here I'll show you here, you can look back, here's the entrance hall. So you could move through. Many of these spaces have been mapped, right? So you literally can, with the click of the finger, there's this little button up here, you just depress it and suddenly you're moving through the space. And you can, what's this image up here? There's Ravana shaking Mount Kailash, right, with Shiva on top. oh yeah, here we go. So if the content is of high enough quality, you can zoom right in, right? Here's Shiva sitting up on top. Here's Ravana down below, shaking the mountain. Students may have been reading about this myth in the article. You can send them then to go find stuff in the compound. It's actually what I did with the Kailasanatha temple is I had them read an article, and then when they came into class, I said, okay, all the photos that were in that article, go find them. And they just ran through the temple compound. So they're in the classroom, but they all have their headsets on and looking around, and you can just tell that they're all going in different directions. And then someone's yelling, I found the Lingam of Light myth, and I found I'm in the sanctum. I found the Murti, and what's wrong with Nandi? He doesn't have a head, right? Because the head's destroyed here, but and I can give you. All right, let me move. So, talking about context, like I was with the Lakshmi. So, here's this image of Shiva, and in this hallway, and then directly across is this another dramatic one of Shiva. So, all these Puranic myths that they can experience this a sculptural representation of them and how they are dispersed throughout a temple compound. They had to go find another. So here's, many of you will know this from Jack Hawley, I think, who had written about it, and others, the Mahabharata tales, and on the other side, I think, is the Ramayana. Here's another Ravana shaking the mountain. All right, so as I said, so many temples or many spaces have already been mapped on Google Street View, allowing the students the ability to move through the space as if they're actually walking around within the site. The result is that the students are free to explore at their will, turning their heads in whichever direction catches their interests. They gain perspectives on the space they could never get from the standard framed still images, often leading to unique observations and interesting questions that give rise to potential research directions or inspire them to turn to the texts that, inspire them to turn to the texts to learn about what they have stumbled across in their wanderings. And I want to share with you, so in this particular class, I had four different writing assignments. One of them is this standard midterm essay question. But in terms of the immersive experience, I have them writing weekly response papers. And what they have to do is they have to go out and find some virtual reality content of a site that we're not reading about. And they can use the readings as sort of a jumping off point. Like one of the chapters we read early was from Diana Eck's Sacred Geography, India Sacred Geography. And in every one of those chapters, she names 15, 20, even 30 different sites. And so I tell them to just choose any one of those sites and go see if you can find them on the map in India and see if there's virtual reality content. And then they have to put their experience of that, the immersive experience that they have, into conversation with the texts, with what they've been reading about, with the content. So let me read you a few comments from the students, and you can see how the immersive experience is changing the way that they are learning about the spaces. While the room itself is overwhelming in detail, I decided to look up and found that the ceiling to be even more impressive. So now this girl she looked up in the temple site that she was experiencing, right, and suddenly saw something really intriguing that she wouldn't have seen in a regular photograph. She's now writing her paper on the ceiling paintings in the Meenakshi temple in Madurai. Right? So and this site that she looked up at wasn't even in Madurai. It's like that showed her something. And then when she went to another site, she remembered, I want to look up. And then she saw this in these incredible painted ceilings. And now she's writing her paper on that. This is another student. Leaving the womb chamber, the following room is lined with such intricately decorated columns. This is one of my favorite parts of the temple. This whole room is decorated so beautifully. The carvings of the columns, the ceiling design, natural light pours into the architectural structure, creating a feeling that the energy and power of Shiva and the linga projects out through the temple compound and extends into the sky and mountains. Okay, we can also then talk about here what's missing. And I think for most of us who do field work, I mean, the first thing that stands out is there's no people here, right? So this is Ellora. It's an archaeological site, right? And this mapping was done by the Archaeological Survey of India. So they went in when no one was there and they mapped the whole place, right? So here's a site that I work on, the Yaneshwar Samadhi Shrine in Alandi. And this is the marketplace out front that for me, I remember the first time I went there, how striking just this little, this area where these three sort of pathways of the town converge in front of the temple compound has always stood out to me. And somebody has not mapped it, but captured it. So this is on Google Street View. You can see all, the typical temple stalls, right? Selling all the puja items. So much more dynamic experience. Even more dynamic then is what you can find, and there's less content, but this is expanding, is what you can find on the YouTube 360. So this is deeply experiential. And the lighting in here is not so great in the room, but when you have this headset on, it's pretty amazing to be able to walk into the Hari Mandir and see everybody else moving through the space. And you're moving with them. So you're watching practice. You can pause at any time with these and still look around. Let me just show you another quickly from this same video, but further. So here you are, you're actually in Hari Mandir. Right? And for the musicians that you've been listening to as you've been doing your pradakshina. And it's not live right now. No, no. Oh, right, right, no. 1 minute. Okay. Um, so here they are in the classroom. This helps me to talk about sort of what's working and what's not working. One of the things I found that is really difficult is using the headsets in the classroom is you have no control over them. Once they put it on, you know, they're gone. And look, you can see they're all each one of them is looking somewhere else, right? So if I'm in there and then when I do this, I can't see them. So I'm talking about, um, I don't know, the Ravana shaking the mountain, and I'm looking at it and I'm pointing things out and I'm talking, and there could be anywhere else in the compound, and I'm watching them as I'm talking and I can see, they're clicking. So I know they're walking around, right? So I have sort of changed now. My practice in the classroom is I control it by using the monitor like this. It's not the same, it's not as immersive, but we can have discussion and conversation then. And then I have assignments where they, both in the classroom and outside of the classroom, where they can explore, but I'm not trying to teach with it. Here's something else that has come up. And I think I'll just go to it. We have to deal with the volume. Let's go up. Let's see if this can hear this. Hopefully you can hear it. Oh. Okay, so you can pause it. I actually had this experience with and I thought of this movie immediately, where I was at home just doing prep stuff for class, and I took the thing away, and suddenly I was just dizzy, and I was like, wow, and it took a while for me to sort of regain my sense of being in this space instead of in that space. And then I just thought, wow, I'm just my age, my vision wasn't responding as quickly as most people would or whatever. But then in the classroom, I asked them to use their headsets at one point, and one of the students wasn't. And I said, how come did you forget it? And he said, no, it hurts my eyes. So now I have this fear that I'm maybe I'm permanently damaging my students. I don't know. So there are potentially some side effects. There are, you can get your own, capture your own content, right? So create your own content. What I have left to talk about is heading in that direction, because in terms of my own research on the spaces I work on, I want to capture these spaces just so I can revisit them when I'm not in India and think through things, but also bring them into the classroom. And also I've been thinking about assignments where students can go out and capture their own content. So during Q&A or during demonstrations, I'd be happy to talk about that aspect of it as well, because it's actually user-friendly and moves from using your iPhone, so it's free, in order to capture the space. That's what this is right here, is actually the building that I work in. This is William and Mary. So I did this with my iPhone. In about, it took me about 2 minutes to do this. And then you can move into more sophisticated cameras that, the IT department, or the e-learning department bought me a $300 camera, that now I can do that with 1 click. And then there are high-def video cameras that you can use that I'm working on getting funding for that, but those are like 15,000 and up to do something as high def as what we were seeing at Alora, right? This camera, the 1 and the 1-click camera I have right now does video, but when you go to video, it loses its high definition. So anyway, I'd be more than happy to talk about that and what kinds of assignments and I foresee the possibility of with students capturing their own content. And I'll stop there.